who are joining us a little early. But yeah, I like to already be on your.
All right.
So I will let you know that what you say will be heard by those who are.
Cool.
Are
do I have to do anything to let folks in?
Yeah. No. They're not. So what's interesting is they're not going to come into our Zoom meeting. This is just us. They're only watching on YouTube. But I've got my YouTube channel open, and so I'm going to put in the chat right now. Welcome. If you have any questions for Miss Kim, please
There it is.
put them here. All right. All right. And we got 2 people already. It is only 5:59 p.m. and we already have 2 friends. So that's exciting.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah. So here we are ready and on time. I am so excited about this. I can't even tell you.
Well, this will be fun.
Yeah.
I wonder why it didn't post on, you know that the invite didn't post? Oh, there it is. Okay. I was going to say it didn't post on the animals don't cover their tracks page, but I do see it.
I should have put another one there today. Did you put one there today?
I did a little while ago.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Just going to see which ones showed. Okay.
All right. It is 5:59. We're getting ready.
Awesome.
All right. We got 5 people.
Well, I can share your.
Also say.
Cool. I can share the YouTube link on my Facebook page, right? That makes it live.
Yeah, that's easier for them to just come on over right now.
I just put that in there. Okay. So YouTube link. Oops. Here it is. Share.
All right. Well, it is exactly 6 p.m. So while Kim is gathering her technology, I'm going to go ahead and officially start our program. We like to get hooked up just a few minutes early just to make sure that everything is working, but everything is working and it's going really well so far, thankfully, because Kim is dealing with smoke and all kinds of crazy up there. And I just feel so excited to be able to get some of her time tonight. So for the people who don't know, my phone is ringing. My phone is ringing. Oh, sorry about that.
I heard it. I thought it was mine.
We were just joking about how whenever we go live, the phone rings, and sure enough, there it goes. So if you don't know Kim Cabrera, she is amazing. She is one of my all-time favorite people. I have learned so much from her, even just through social media. Although I'm not going to lie, I've sent messages too. She is super humble for being the amazing human being that she is. If you have an animal track question, I don't care what kind of animal track. I mean a ringtail was dragging a scrub jay that only had one wing on a Thursday night. That's what I'm talking about. When I think of Kim Cabrera, that is what I think about, because that is what happens on her Facebook page, Animals Don't Cover Their Tracks. There will be this crazy scene in dirt, and then suddenly she's in, and everybody's like, we don't know, Bigfoot, mountain lion, dog. And she's all, oh yes, well, that was a ringtail and he was clearly dragging a one-winged scrub jay. That's obvious from this, that, and the other. So anyway, I love her so much. And I am really excited that she's got 5 minutes to talk with us. And she's so interesting. So thank you, Kim, for joining us tonight. It's awesome to have you here. I love your picture behind you.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you like it.
Is there a story there?
It's I think it's the most ironic bear picture ever. It's these cute little cubs. The artist's name is Ursula Salzman, and I'm not sure where this picture came from, possibly Yellowstone or something, but it says, you know, danger, area closed, extreme grizzly bear danger, and do not enter. And here's these two little cubs just playing with the signs, like, you know, being cubs. And I think it's the most ironic, awesome bear picture ever. And so I thought I would give a shout out to the artist who took that picture, Ursula Salzman, and it's pretty amazing. I love it.
It is awesome.
I think she even sells copies of it online. You know, there's a website where you can get it. Fine Art America. I think you can actually get prints of it, which I'm going to order. I think
it's super cool. I love it.
It's amazing, and I love bears, of course. So
yes.
Had to put it in the background.
Well, that would be obvious from your bear tracker website. So tonight I'm hoping that we can get to know you more, and I've got some questions for you, and there will be some questions from the audience I already know, and I'm hoping that maybe you will want to share some of your favorite stuff with us, because you are just a font of information and cool videos and cool pictures and amazing stories. In fact, you know, I feel like if anyone ran into Bigfoot, it would probably be you.
Oh yeah, I've I haven't run into Bigfoot in person, but I've been asked to track a couple of times where there were alleged Bigfoot sightings, and I say alleged because they both turned out to be elaborate hoaxes. But it was kind of fun. You want me to share the story right now, or tell you about that one?
Tracking Bigfoot. I want to hear it.
Okay, so tracking Bigfoot. So as you know, I'm in Northern California, which is, you know, the prime habitat for Bigfoot, right? So this is where he's supposed to live, and the forests here have the tallest trees in the world, and so we have a number of state parks and national parks here. And this particular story took place in a state park that I worked in about 19 years ago, so it was a while back. And what happened was there was a person that was he claimed that he was driving through the Redwoods, and that he saw this animal running away from the road, and then it went into the forest, and then he got out of his truck and looked, and in this little creek drainage he found some Bigfoot tracks, or what, you know, they were 15-inch long tracks. They were huge. So he went and flagged down a park employee who was driving along the road, and reported this to the park employee and said, I just saw Bigfoot, and look, here's his tracks. And so the park employee dutifully got on the radio and reported it to one of the rangers, and the rangers went out there and looked at it and said, wow, this looks like it's the real deal. And so because they knew that I was into tracking, they called me. And you know, at the time I was working at another job site, so they called me up and said, hey, this guy found this Bigfoot track and we think it's the real thing. Why don't you come out and look at it? And I said, well, I will come out as long as you guarantee that nobody's going to walk around and trample all around those tracks and make a mess of the scene. I want to have it kind of pristine so I can follow those tracks. And they said, okay, we'll do that. We won't let anybody go beyond where they've already walked. And I said, okay. So I went out there and saw these two really perfect tracks. And what it was is there was a stream, and the whole stream bed was gravel, except for right in a little area near the road where there was some sand. And in that place where there was the sand, there were two tracks, and they were huge. They were 15 inches long. They looked like human tracks. And so I said, oh, these are kind of cool, you know, and let's make some plaster casts of them. So I of course had plaster because I, you know, was prepared after they called me. So so I had 25 pounds of plaster. So we mixed it up in buckets and dumped it into the tracks and let that harden. And while that was setting up, I went and did what is called step-by-step tracking. So the step-by-step tracking method is used by trackers that are training to learn to do search and rescue tracking. And it's a way of training your eye to see sign. So remember I said that this was in gravel. And in gravel, you're not going to have perfect tracks because it's not a substrate that really lends itself to having good tracks. So what you follow is sign. So you could have pebbles that are knocked over. You could have little bits of grass that have been stepped on and bruised or laid over. And you can have pebbles rolled out of their sockets, things like that. So That's what we call sign, anything that's a clue to an animal's presence that's not an actual track. So what I ended up doing is using the step-by-step method and following the sign up the little creek drainage. And what I noticed right off the bat is the size of the imprints that I was following were nowhere near 15 inches. So they were a lot smaller. And, you know, in gravel, I couldn't get a totally accurate measurement. So I followed it up this creek drainage, and then whoever or whatever it was got up on a log. And redwood logs, if you've ever seen them, they're the tallest trees in the world, but they're also very large in diameter. So, you know, the person, or Bigfoot alleged, got up on a log and walked along the top of the log. And again, that's redwood duff and moss. So it's not a substrate that shows perfect sign. So all I was able to find were scuffs in the moss and things like that. Then it went down onto the ground again and went through some redwood duff. And again, you don't have perfect soil for tracks, but the spacing was not anything out of the ordinary for a person. And then it went up on a log again and walked on a log and then jumped down into a patch of mud. And in that patch of mud, I found 2 perfect boot tracks. So between there and the place where I had started, I had connected the dots by doing the step-by-step method. And I even marked the tracks. You throw little bits of surveyor's tape. You just tear off a little bit of it and drop it in each track so you can go back and follow the trail later. And so I had this entire trail all marked, and it ended up with those boot tracks. So it was somebody who had these stamps that they made somehow and either strapped them on their boots to put them in the sand and then walked up the creek to try and conceal their tracks. Because I think all that walking around on logs and walking through the forest was a way to try to hide the trail. So whoever it was pulled a pretty elaborate joke on the rangers, and tracking was useful in that instance to prove that it was not the real deal at that time.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy.
So that was pretty fun. That was fun.
That's hilarious. How long did that whole endeavor take? Is that like a couple days, a couple weeks?
Probably an hour or two.
Oh, an hour
to do that. A couple hours. Yeah, because it was, you know, I had to drive out there. I had to go stop and get some plaster, and I brought all that out. And so by the time I got there, cast the tracks, that took about 15 minutes to mix and pour the plaster. And then the time it took to follow this trail for, I don't know, a couple tenths of a mile through the woods and onto the logs and everything. And step by step, you have to go slow. You can't just run on the trail because they're not clear tracks. So you're just following sign. And some of the signs or indicators of tracks are very small and very detailed. And so you have to take your time and go slow. So even though it was a shorter distance, I'd say it was less than a quarter mile. It took a while to follow it up.
Wow. Yeah.
When they're actually doing this, when the search and rescue trackers are putting this into practice, they're not doing step by step. They rarely are doing that. They're doing what we call sign cutting, and they're looking for sign, and then they're leaping ahead to a next place where what we call a track trap, or a place where sign will show up a lot easier. And so they're looking for the trail up there to increase the distance and shorten the time that it takes for them to follow it up. So they're not necessarily using step by step. But it's good if you have a scene like that with something where you want to find every track. It's very useful.
That's so interesting. I did not actually know that there were 2. That makes so much sense, though. That's really interesting. Well, we have Bindi from tracking class who said hello.
Hi. And
Philip, one of your tracking mentorship Facebook buddies, here to hear your cool stories. And we have a question from,
nice. Okay.
From Wayne King. Hello, Kim. Glad to meet you. How do you track mammals, fox, coyote, bear, or deer, in a grassy field where no identifiable footprints are left?
Okay, in a grassy field, if there's no identifiable footprints, you are looking just for sign. And in that instance, you're not going to go to the middle of a field and find a little compression in the grass and say that's a dog or a bear or a deer. Deer have hoof hoof feet with edges to them, and the edges will cut into the grass a little bit more. So when you see deer tracks in grass, there is an impression of that foot shape, which is like a little upside down heart. So you will get some of that pointedness showing in grass. Animals that have larger feet, like bears, I rely on looking at the trail pattern, and if it's a grassy field that's in a wild area where you know there's no people walking across it, it's a lot easier to narrow it down to the wild animals, because bears tend to walk in what we call an overstep walk. So the front foot will come down, the hind foot will land ahead of it a little bit. Sometimes when they're in grass, it'll be almost right on top of it if they're doing what we call stomp marking, where they make stomp, 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 and do tracks like that. So sometimes you can identify bear tracks. The smaller soft pawed animals like your coyotes and foxes, if you're in the middle of a grassy field, it's a lot more difficult to state with 100% certainty that a little compression that you see in the grass is a coyote track versus a fox or something. You can utilize gait patterns to help with that, because your coyotes and foxes will move in certain ways. They tend to use the trot a lot as their gait, whereas animals like bobcats will use an overstep walking gait a little bit more. So if you can find a series of compressions and assess the gait and the step length between each of those sets of tracks, that will help you identify what you see in a grassy field. But again, that's going to be a really slow follow-up when you're following something through a grassy field. And one of the techniques that might help is to go to the edge of the field and kind of survey the edge of the field and try to pick up the tracks coming out of it. Try to find a place where there's a dirt road or a trail or something where tracks will show up a lot easier. And if you can follow that trail through there, or at least find knocked over grasses in the direction that you're heading, and then try to pick it up on an area with easier substrate, that'll help a lot with your trailing that animal. Because grassy fields aren't necessarily the best place to pick up and identify tracks, but you can follow through there.
That was a good question.
That answered the question.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the best way you can. So I had a question based on a conversation that we had earlier. How old were you when you started tracking animals?
Oh gosh. So my first tracking experiences that I remember were with my dad when I was a little kid, and he used to take me to the hills above where we lived. And we lived in a suburb of Orange County at the time. And he would take me up there and we would look at tracks. He would show me, this is a snake track, this is a coyote track, and he'd point them out and show me what they were and things. So I remember that was my first experience with it. And then when I was about 7th grade or so, that was when I obtained the Peterson Field Guide to Animal Tracks. And it was published, I think, that edition was published in 1974, but so I got that around 7th grade, and that was when I became kind of obsessed with tracks. And I started drawing tracks and trying to learn the details of them around that age. I wouldn't necessarily have called myself a tracker at that age. I was just, tracking student, but I think most of us as trackers know that tracking is a skill that it takes a lifetime to learn, so you're always a student. So, because you'll never learn everything there is to learn about this. It's just too much to learn, and I think that's what makes it fun, is you have something that you could spend a lifetime and never learn everything about it. That's what makes it so amazing. So I think that was my first real introduction to it, was learning to draw them. And then around that time, the first book was published by Tom Brown called The Tracker, and I got that. And a lot of trackers credit that as the inspiration for getting them into this. And the book was really full of stories about how he learned, and that was pretty fascinating at that age. And I said, wow, you really can do this thing. When I really got into it, as far as studying it in depth, I went to I did go to 1 week class at the tracker school, which was in New Jersey. I went to a 1-week class there in 1989. And then I also, when I got back from that and I was in college, I started studying with the search and rescue people to learn tracking of how do you track humans that get lost in the woods. And so I spent from 91 to about 2004, I think, studying that and, traveling to various places in California and Oregon to take those classes. And then my next step in kind of the education of the tracker, I guess, is when I started taking cyber tracker evaluations. And cyber tracker was introduced here in 2005. Prior to that, in 1998, we had a tracking conference of the International Society of Professional Trackers in California, and a man named Louis Liebenberg came over, and he did a presentation on tracking and South Africa, and told us about this software that he had designed called Cyber Tracker. And Cyber Tracker was originally created so that trackers in South Africa, who were the native trackers there, were able to record their observations, because these guys are phenomenal trackers. They're the best trackers in the world, but they may not be able to necessarily read and write in English. And so he designed software that would work on a Palm Pilot. And so they had this little handheld device that they would be able to punch in buttons based on icons. So if they saw an elephant, they could record the number of elephants, what they saw it doing, what they saw it eating, and all of this was based on icons. And of course, those devices had a built-in GPS, so the location would be recorded, and then that data was later downloaded, and then it could be used for conservation purposes. So that was the original cyber tracker, and Louis Liebenberg brought this here in 1998 and told us about it, and he said, the test of a tracker is if you can sit down and draw from memory all the tracks of your local animals and draw them accurately and to scale. And I was like, I want to try this. And of course, my first results were disastrous. And some of them are pretty bad. And the ones that I put on the website, some of them are pretty good. Some of them I need to work on the scale and things. But I kind of took that to heart when he said that. And so I tried to learn how to do that and get better at it. And the thing with drawing is you solidify the details of those tracks in your brain, because the act of drawing makes you focus so closely on the details of the track that you start to remember the shapes, and you get that shape memory in your brain. So that was my first introduction to Cyber Tracker. And then the evaluations started here in 2005, and I think I took my first one in 2013. And those are just incredible. I can't recommend them enough. They're a tremendous learning experience. You go in there thinking you know what you're doing, and you come out going, oh my gosh, there's so much to learn that I don't know. And it may be overwhelming, but it's also an amazing learning experience. And you just come out of there wanting to learn more. So that's kind of how my progression of becoming a tracker, starting, as just a little kid, getting interested in it, and then to now being into the cyber tracker thing. Oh, can't hear you.
I muted myself because you could
You
hear
muted yourself. Okay.
Yeah, you could hear dinner being made. I'm like, I'm just gonna mute that for now.
Oh, okay.
But so you were saying that you had traveled, you were studying to track people. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So have you tracked people?
So yeah, so it's used, there's a lot of search and rescue teams that have trackers on their teams that are certified to use tracking to help find lost people. And it seems like California doesn't have quite as many. There's a lot more in Oregon and Washington. And I think that has to do with when it originally started, the organization I was going to was Universal Tracking Services. And a couple of the instructors were sheriffs up there, were connected to search and rescue teams and had connections. And so the skill spread. And so a lot of people in that area got trained to become trackers and and were using it in their search and rescue work. So and California just hasn't kind of caught on to that yet. There's a few. There are a bunch here, and there's some in Nevada, and but yeah, that's pretty interesting to be able to track people. And I put it to use. You wanted to hear about that, right? But
Yeah.
I did put it to use once here, which was probably 2005 or 6. It was about 15 years ago. The place where I am got burglarized. It's a business, and it got burglarized early one morning, and so I discovered this, and of course reported it to the sheriff and everything, and then so I told the sheriff when he came out, I said, well, you know, they left all these tracks. Let's go follow it, and he said no, because you know unless they've been trained in tracking, they really don't believe in it as a skill. And so to them, it's kind of a waste of time. So I think he thought it would be a waste of time. So he left, and after he left, I went and kind of followed it up and put together a lot of the story. I did write it up. It's on my website. But basically what happened is they had come in early in the morning. They'd come in the dirt road, and along the way had left some tracks and dropped a hat, which was kind of nice for clues. Then they came down to one of the buildings, and they cut through a screen and climbed over to get into the building, stole a bunch of stuff, threw it off the back porch. Another guy that was down below gathered up the stuff, and then they departed north on a trail that left the property. And they went through the woods, and there was 2 people and a dog. And when they were trying to leave, they went around a neighboring property and apparently got scared, and one of them ducked under some brush, and where he dropped a cigarette pack with a lighter and some money in it, and they didn't notice it was missing. And then they went off and went across this suspension bridge that's between the 2 properties, that really is only designed for bringing sewage across, not people. But they went across that and went on to property on the other side. There's a state park over there. There's also a state prison over there. And so they ended up on the property over there. So I had followed them that far, and I knew I couldn't exactly go trespassing on that property. So I had to get permission, and I got permission from the authorities over there to go on their property and follow it. And I ended up following, probably the entire track took about 3 miles, and it took a number of hours just to follow it up, because it went over varied terrain. It went through the forest. It went across forest duff. It went across grassy fields. They cut through a fence. There was a lot of sign to find as I went along. They did drop off some of our stuff because I guess they didn't want to carry it anymore. So they threw it in the woods and left it, and I found that. And then where I ended up ending the trail was there's a little creek drainage. And so the creek came down like this, and they were walking along one of the edges. And right on the edge, there was a rock that they stepped on, and it was loose, and it slipped. And the guy that was standing on it fell into the creek drainage and ended up falling into poison oak, which broke his fall. And I call that karma. So it was at that point I saw a wheelbarrow down there and some cable and stuff down there. And so I said, well, at this point I need to go up and notify the people that own this property and stuff. And because the guy that was with him had gone up and down the creek and left a bunch of tracks and made a big mess with the tracks there. So I went and found them and let them know what I'd found. And so they ended up getting the sheriff back out there, but the sheriff didn't want to go out there because there was a lot of poison oak. And they weren't interested in getting poison oak. So they refused to go there, but they did come with me to retrieve the stuff that had been thrown in the woods. And, you know, they gathered that for their evidence and everything. And then the next week, the road that is nearby, one of our drills was found. One of the drills that had been stolen was found thrown off the edge of the road because our name was carved on it, and they didn't think they could sell it, I guess. So it got disposed of. So we got that back, and we got back the stuff that had been thrown into the woods.
That's
So
crazy.
tracking does work.
Yeah,
I guess.
what's amazing to me is the details, right? And that's what's amazing about tracking. It's the details of your story. When you get to the part and you're like, oh yeah, well, the guy, you know, knocked the rock over and fell down into the poison oak. And like, you can look at it and see how all of that occurred. Like, that's mind blowing to me. So there's a
Yeah.
question on here from Wayne King, which goes right along with this. It's
Okay.
absolutely the follow-up, which is, what do you find are the biggest differences between tracking animals and tracking humans?
Well, tracking animals is different because they're a lot more habitual than humans and they waste less energy. So wild animals are all about survival out there, and they don't have necessarily the kind of energy to run around and have fun and explore and things like that. They have to be very focused on finding their next meal, finding food, water, and shelter, and things like that. So I find wild animal trails are a lot more habitual in that they follow the same paths a lot. They will take the easiest routes if they can. They'll use our roads and trails often because those are more open, easier to use areas. And, you know, they'll use them in hours when we're not using them. Humans, we tend to be a little more sloppy when we're outdoors because we don't always spend our time outdoors. And so when we're out there, we tend to do things like, you know, tripping over rocks and stumbling and falling sometimes. And also when we're out there for recreational purposes, we tend to do a little bit more wandering and exploring. And rather than having a very straightforward, purposeful trail like an animal does, we might go over and look at this tree or go look at a flower or go look at, you know, look at a view or vista point or something. And so our trails are predictable from a human perspective because we're all interested in the flowers or the viewpoint or the vista point, things like that, when we're out there. But we're also more unpredictable because everybody's different. And, you know, you might be a botanist and you might be checking out every plant out there, or you might be a photographer and you might be looking at scenic vistas and things like that. So when we are recreating in the woods, we're a lot more unpredictable than wildlife is. Wildlife, I think, is just, they're focused.
Okay. And then what is the first or second mistake that new trackers make?
Oh, wow. The first or second mistake. Probably the first mistake is thinking that with a little bit of training, we know the tracks. So, and I know I've done this a bunch of times, and even experienced trackers fall into this too, that we think because we have a little bit of training that we know all the tracks, but we don't. And it takes a lot of, I guess, a lot of self-examination for us to realize that we don't, and to be able to admit that, you know, I don't know all these tracks. And there are always going to be tracks that are going to puzzle us or that can't be identified. Some are just too degraded or too old or have had other tracks on top of them or just are not identifiable. And so I think the first biggest mistake is our overconfidence as trackers, thinking that we know all of them and we don't. And the second mistake I think would be just, I don't know, just assuming that all tracks are going to be like they see in the field guide, because that's a big thing. I think what I noticed on iNaturalist and what I noticed on the Facebook group is when we're posting tracks or when folks are posting tracks, I think there's an expectation that every track is going to look just like what you see in the field guide. And that's a big mistake that all of us make, because, you know, we think the field guides are the last word on tracking, and they are in a way, but the tracks that they show are usually the most perfect examples of those tracks, with all the details present. And in real life, tracks aren't like that because animals walk on different substrates. The tracks age. You know, an animal can trip and fall just like a human can. And so we have to kind of be open to the interpretation of the tracks, and you know, rather than getting that field guide image in our mind and saying that's what this track should look like, we need to try to learn the variations. And I think that's one of those mistakes that we make as trackers. Hopefully
That's a great answer. So we have a few more questions on there. but it's also already 6:30. So what I'd
wow.
like to do at this point, I never did make you the host, so let me do that right now. And maybe you
Okay.
can share some highlights from your website and your videos and your iNaturalist. You got and also the Facebook page, right? Like there's so much, you're up to so much, and it's all so cool and so educational that I would just love for us to get into that. What do you want to share first?
All right, so let me show you the let me show you the actual Facebook page. So what has been mentioned is this is the Facebook page. It's called Animals Don't Cover Their Tracks, and anyone can join this. You're welcome to join. You're welcome to post mystery tracks on here. We identify tracks and signs. So anything that indicates the presence of an animal is appropriate here. So feathers, nests, bones, skulls, tracks, scats, burrows, digging, anything like that that indicates the presence of an animal. And it could be any animal. We have birds and birds, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, insects, everything. So all of that is welcome in here. So here is just an example. This is a picture of some scat. And this looks like it's a wood rat scat, but so this is appropriate. There's also this picture right here where it's one of those find the animal posts. And I stared at this thing for the longest time and tried to figure that out. So this is a group that you can join. Some people post images of animals and ask us to identify them. Oh, these are wonderful. Look at these bear tracks. So this is a group where if you do find tracks outdoors and you want them identified, or you want to have a discussion with other trackers, you're welcome to join this group. And you're welcome to post pictures and have discussions with us about the tracks that you find. And that's the purpose of this, is to get more folks interested in tracking and allow you to post things that are puzzles. If you find a track that's not perfectly clear, you can get help from other trackers in identifying it. So that's called Animals Don't Cover Their Tracks, and it's on Facebook.
Do you have a favorite post from there?
What's that?
Do you have a favorite recent post from there? Anything fun? Oh, there was something funny this week. The shape of the cat head.
Oh, that's right. I want to see if I can find that one.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Let me scroll down and find that one, because this was kind of cool. Okay, so here's the reply to it. I want to find the original though. Where's the original? I don't have the best internet connection, so it's gonna be a minute here.
Yeah, that was such a funny one. It was like the weird angle, and everybody was like, is that a bobcat? Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, it was this one. So, okay, so it was this image was the one that they posted. So, and this led to a lot of discussion. This was this a bobcat or was it a cougar? And it ended up being several biologists and taxidermists identified this as a bobcat. And they did that by the ear tufts here, the arm, the spots on the arm, which that word comment is in the way. But I think on your own screen you might be able to see it. The white tuft, the white spot on the back of the ears, which cougars do have, but the bobcat's pretty big. The tail, there was some characteristics of the tail that helped identify it, but this ended up being a bobcat, and it was a lot of discussion on that. That was pretty interesting. That it went on for about 500 comments. It was
wow. So, like, what is the biggest one? Like, when you get what is the biggest confusion that you would like people make in the tracking world?
The biggest confusion that I've ever run across in the tracking world is dog versus cougar. That is the biggest. The tracks of dogs and cougars often get confused, and I tell the story of the tracking conference that I went to back in, I think it was 2013 or something, or 2008, where there was a presentation I gave, and it was on the subject of mountain lions versus dogs. And so what I did is I took some of my emails from years previous, about 10 years previous. And the emails came in through this website that I'm showing right now called Bear Trackers Animal Tracks Den.
Okay.
This is my website where I talk about tracks and sign, and it's an educational website here for you to look up tracks and hopefully learn about the tracks of these animals. And so through that website, I allow people to send me tracks, pictures to look at. And so what I did is I took the cougar versus dog emails that I had gathered for about 10 years, and I sorted them out into, okay, these ones over here were the tracks that were sent to me that the person thought was a cougar, but it ended up being a dog. And I came up with some statistics, and it ended up being something like 94% of the tracks pictures that were sent to me where folks thought they were cougar tracks, they ended up being dog tracks. And the main reason for that was presence or absence of claw marks. And that is something that's a really big misconception that's been going around in the tracking community for years, decades. So the presence or absence of claw marks is one really good clue, but it's not the only clue. And often dog tracks will not show their claws. So that was the main factor driving all of those emails was, hey, this track doesn't appear to have claw marks. I think it's a mountain lion. Other species that I got in that collection were squirrels, because squirrel tracks, the track pattern shows 2 small dots with 2 larger ones. And so it looks like a 4-toed animal, when in reality, it's just the collection of all 4 tracks from a smaller animal. So I got a lot of squirrels. There were some bear tracks that were mistaken for mountain lion, because sometimes on bear tracks, the smaller inner toe does not show up, and so they can look like mountain lion tracks. And then a variety of other species. There were squirrels, deer, the bears. So there was quite a few species whose tracks had been confused for mountain lions. But that's the main one, I think, is cougar versus dog. And what I wanted to show you on here was I have a mountain lion versus dog page on here. So let me see if I can pull that up, because it'll.
And just for the record,
so here's the
so everyone knows, that's where I got the hand with the cougar over it that I put as the cover page. It's from this website. It's so helpful.
Let me see if I can find that. I want to go just directly to that. I want to go directly to it. Okay, so canine versus feline. So on that website, I have this page called Canine versus Feline, and there is available on this page a PowerPoint that you can download, and you're free to use it and distribute it as you like, as long as you don't change it. And the PowerPoint talks about the difference between mountain lion and dog tracks. So if you have a track that, I'm not going to download this right now, it's going to take too long. Probably going to stop my internet connection.
Yeah, that's
I shouldn't have done that.
Oh no.
Okay. Anyway, I'm not going to open that up right now. So if you want, you're welcome to download that and go through it. And maybe Dana can download it and show it. She has a better internet connection than I do. But some of the characteristics, I go through them here and indicate, different things to look for. And this is where you got the picture here. Mm-hmm. Because your hand is a very good indicator of mountain lion versus dog, because of the structure of our hand. So our middle finger is longer than our other fingers. And the same is true on mountain lions and dogs. So on those mammals, you number the digits, number 1 being the thumb or the inner toe, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you number them from the inside to the outside. So toe number 3 is the middle one. And on mountain lions, toe number 3 is usually a leading toe. So it's usually further ahead in the track than toe number 4 here. So if you were to draw a line, I don't know if you can see my cursor here on the screen.
Yeah.
So if you were to draw a line here, toe number 3 would be ahead of them. And the same is true on this little mountain lion track right here. Let me show it on the illustration. So see how this toe here, A, is ahead of the other toes. So that's equivalent to this 3rd finger being further ahead than all the others. So if you find a suspect track that you think might be a mountain lion, you can often look for that leading toe, and that will help. The front and the hind both show it to a certain degree, so it's something to look for when you find those tracks, and it's a helpful clue.
And then we have a question: how do you distinguish between a coyote and a domestic dog track?
Okay, coyotes versus dogs. So coyote tracks are surprisingly smaller than we think. You know, 3 3/4 inches or so is probably a big, huge coyote. But their toes are really tight and close together. Let me see if I can pull up a coyote track to demonstrate here for you. Oops, I'm gonna go back to mammals. So coyotes, the toes, I'm gonna find a nice little track here. So notice how these toes here are kind of all very tight together in the track. They're not really splayed out like those of a dog. So when you see a dog track, the outer 2 toes stick out a little bit more because of the splay. Because dogs, when they're outdoors, they're having fun, they're running around, exploring. And so they do a lot more romping around in the woods than coyotes and foxes do. So the tightness of these toes will help indicate that it's a wild canine. So you can see how closely together those toes are. They're just not splayed out like in a dog. They're close together. Also, the outer, notice on these outer toes how small and narrow and forward pointing those claw marks are. So on the outer toes, sometimes the claw marks are so fine that they're just little pinpoints out here, or they don't imprint like this one on the right. So there's not, you can't see that one because it's not there. The 2 leading claw marks often will point towards each other like this a little bit. And they're also very narrow and straight. The thing with dogs is a lot of dogs run around on concrete and or
Oh no, I think she is frozen. All right, well, she will be back, I know, unfortunately. All right, let me figure out our technical difficulty here. I'm going to be the host, and I'm gonna share my screen because we've got a really cool video that I know she wanted to share tonight. So while we're waiting for her to get connected, that's what we're gonna do. All right, where is that one? We're gonna watch a river otter because this is what she wanted to share.
This is a switch bike.
Oh, sorry about that.
No.
All right, here we go. Oh, wait, what happened? Okay, I don't know what happened there, you guys. Here we go.
you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Right now, we're watching your video, the otter eating the
Okay.
fish.
Oh, good. Awesome. Sorry about that. I don't know what I did.
So she's swimming here. She's filming while she's swimming. We're getting closer and closer. She said to me earlier that this is the closest she's ever been able to witness this. And this is actually her favorite video right now. And this is on her YouTube channel. She's so brave. Look at this. Kim, are you here? You can hear him chewing.
Nice. You'll be able to see him in a minute here.
You're back. Yay.
Yeah, the internet went haywire. I think the device overheated or something. Hopefully it stays going now. I had two devices and it didn't go to the other one. There he is. He's kind of a messy eater. Where did I get cut off?
Oh
In the
my,
middle of coyotes?
yes, it was, yes, the end of the
Middle of coyote.
coyote dog footprint story.
Yeah, okay. Are there a lot of questions?
There's a couple that I don't, well, there's a couple that I'm not sure you'll be able to answer. One is from Bindi, what animal could have caused damage to a pine tree? There isn't any damage to the underlayer, only the bark. The damage is basketball and 3 foot off the ground ideas.
Boy, 3 foot off the ground would be either a deer or elk or maybe a bear. Depends on what type of damage it was.
And then we have another one, says, I found an Australian tank filled with what seemed to be a latrine from a wild felid. Also 4 toe scratches on the tank walls. Could this be done by a mountain lion?
Inside the tank, huh? I don't know. It would have to be a situation where you'd have to see more details of it, the scat's shape and the form of the scat. You'd have to pretty much be able to see that. I mean, they don't normally go inside of things to deposit scat. Latrines are usually done by mustelids.
Yeah,
I
and
don't know
then
which ones they have there.
there's one more. Oh, so do you refer to sign other than prints, displaced rock, scat, bone, as tracks?
We usually just call that sign. So anything that's not a actual track, if it's a displaced rock or a bruised leaf or something like that, it's a sign. Scat, we just call scat. Bones and feathers are just, called bones and feathers.
All right, I'm stopping my screen share. I am going to hand you the
Okay.
host again in case you want to share. And, oh, and
Okay.
one of our friends says you got cut off talking
We are
about
being
coyote
censored.
toenails.
America's
Oh my
news
goodness,
outlets
what's
no
happening?
longer provide the truth. I'm Joshua Phillip, senior investigative
What is
reporter with
happening?
the
Is that
Times.
me? Yeah, that's me. Okay, something started on
Yeah,
its
it's
own.
not me. Oh, something started, yeah. Maybe in a
I
different
don't know where
window,
it
something
is.
started.
Can you hear me? What is? Oh, wait, I see it now. Aha, okay. There we go. Sorry for all these technical craziness. We got that back.
So where did I get cut off on the coyote, or should I go back over
It
that?
was,
Or
yeah,
where
it was,
I?
you were talking about coyote toenails pointing inward. And I think you had started to say that dogs are often
Okay.
laid on concrete.
Yeah, dogs often walk a lot on concrete or have their nails trimmed by their owners, and so their toenails tend to be a little less sharp than those of coyotes. And as you can see in the photo here, where my mouse is pointing, these little dots are the nails. So they're very fine. Sometimes they're pretty long and thin if they show up, and sometimes you don't see them at all in some substrates. So the thinness and sharpness of the nails, the fact that they point more straight forward or the front to lean in towards each other like that, all help to tell that that's a coyote versus a dog track. And that overall more tight appearance of the toes, they're more squeezed together rather than being splayed out like a dog track. Although, as shown up here, you can have a splayed coyote track like this one. So their toes can splay out, but the thing you notice about this is there's a lot more indicator of sharp nails rather than dull nails on this one.
Interesting. All right, well,
Yeah.
those are great questions, you guys. And someone named Kim Cabrera is loving this. I have a feeling you might know who that is.
I know who that is. That's my mom. Hi, Mom.
So we just have a few minutes left. I could really literally talk to you all day. Seriously, you're so fun and interesting. Do you want to play a video? One of your, maybe some bears or some mountain lions, or I don't know, something fun like that?
Sure. Yeah, I've got these are here's some recent videos that I have of mountain lions. And let me see if I can share this particular screen. Hold on a moment while I figure out the share thing. Share.
And while you're doing that, we have another question, which is, well, and a comment. I have really been enjoying your underwater photography and videos. Like the
Right.
Hydra recently and the Otter, what are you using to get your great footage and photos?
Okay, so the ones underwater, I'm using an Olympus Tough camera, which is a waterproof camera. It's waterproof to 33 feet. And to get the video, I'm snorkeling to be able to stay underwater and film those things. And the macro, it has a macro mode on it. So the things I was getting, where I was getting the eggs, that's all using the macro functions on that camera.
Awesome, thank
It's a
you.
really nice underwater camera. I
It's
know Olympus
amazing.
has just sold their digital camera line. So, you know, if you want to pick up an Olympus, maybe they'll be starting to sell them cheap, I hope. But there are several other brands of underwater cameras that are really nice that way. They're underwater digital cameras. I think Panasonic makes one and a couple others. So there's a few out there. Just look for underwater digital cameras. You can also use a GoPro if you have a GoPro, because there's a housing you can get for the GoPro that makes it so you can just go underwater with it. And the GoPro has the advantage of having image stabilization on it. So the videos that you're seeing right here, this behavior is called making a scrape. And mountain lions do this. It's a territorial thing. They also do it when they're advertising for mates. Now, the video you saw a moment ago showed this guy, the male lion, with a female. And she's still around. This is the same day. It was The male is the one on the right with the larger, wider head. And notice how he's doing that with his mouth. There's a response, the female is the smaller one here. There's a response called phlegmon, which is where mountain lions have a gland called the vomeronasal organ right behind their front teeth. And in order to smell things, they can, they'll lick their lips or they'll open their mouth slightly to get more scent on that organ. And so that's what he's doing. It's called the phlegmon response. And domestic cats do it too. So if you have a domestic cat and they do that sniffing each other thing, and then one of them has its mouth open and kind of gaping and looking kind of silly, it's actually doing that phlegmon response where it's getting the scent on its vomeronasal organ. So wild felines do that too. This guy is scraping and then he is depositing a scat in the scrape. And I ended up getting some pictures of the scat of the mountain lion, which is pretty fantastic to be able to find and actually to be able to document it on video doing it. These two seem to hang out together for a couple of days, the male and the female lion. And then what happened over the following few days, this was kind of interesting because not only does the scent from the scat stay there, but the scent from the scrape, because when they're scraping with their hind feet, they're rubbing the glands that are on the bottom of their feet into the ground. And so that's depositing scent. So that particular mark is a visual and olfactory marker that attracts other animals. So not only mountain lions like these two, but there was a response to this particular deposit by foxes, skunks, a bear, deer. Notice how he's got his mouth open on the left there. He was doing that phlegmon thing.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. Do you have the video of the other animals on there? Is it a different video?
Yeah, let me skip to the other one. So this little guy came through and responded to it, doing this. Now, I'm not sure what he's doing here. It looks like dragging the anal region on the ground, which is what they do to scent mark. So I think that's what the skunk just did right there. And then we have a fox. Now, foxes, there was a study done by a scientist named Max Allen called The Scent of Your Enemy is My Friend. And it's details how animals like foxes will roll on carnivore scats to acquire the scent. And the theory is that they're doing this so that they smell like that carnivore and make themselves more intimidating to other animals. And so you see the fox here, he's actually rolling on the scat of that mountain lion. And this was not the only fox that did that. And then he urinates on it and leaves. So several of them deposited scent on top of it, and a couple of them rolled in it like this. So foxes are known for doing what's called overmarking, where they will deposit their scats on top of the scats of other carnivores. And what he's doing here, he just urinated. And then let's see, there's also a little skunk. Seems to be checking it out. Skunks are also mustelids, so they use scent, or actually they're musteloids, sorry. Musteloidea. So he didn't do any scent marking on it, but did check it out. And then here comes another skunk a couple days later. Also checking it out. So that scent sticks to that area for a long time, and a number of animals have checked it out since the mountain lion left it there. And it's not only the scat they're checking out, they're also checking out the scrape because there is scent to it. Foxes are probably the most active ones as far as overmarking other species. And then he does a lot of scratching. Here's another fox. Again, rolling on it.
Good time.
And this is several weeks after it was deposited. It was deposited on the 8th, and this one was filmed on the 21st, so 13 days.
Wow.
And they're still actively marking on it.
Wow.
What I noticed about this location is this is a deteriorating log on the left-hand side here. And as the log disintegrates, I think that the, the sawdust-like material there holds scent very well. And that's why all these animals have been marking there. Mountain lions will create what is called community scrapes, where every mountain lion that comes along there may leave a scrape or check out the scrape left by the other mountain lions. And that's what's been happening at this location. I've been catching them there for about 5 months now. And I think the reason is because that log, as it deteriorates, just the sawdust material itself is just an awesome material to hold scent. And, you know, the animals know that. And this is 2 weeks after it was deposited, and the fox is still marking on it.
That is amazing.
Right there, it looks like, see that? He just deposited his own scat on it right there.
Yeah.
That's the behavior called overmarking. And
Yeah.
foxes will deposit their scat on top of bear scats, mountain lion scats, dog scats. They'll put it on decks, stairs, you name it. Anything that humans have out in the woods, the foxes will scent mark on it.
Yeah, one time a fox scent marked on top of dog poop in my own yard, and you helped me identify it. That was last year, right around this time.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm going to fast forward to the bear because there were a lot of foxes. And there was a raccoon that even checked it out.
Oh my goodness.
And
Oh, we're
this
getting
is,
to the end of our time here. I can't believe how fast it goes.
oh my goodness, yeah.
So you guys, while she's going for the video, if you are enjoying this, please like this video. That will help other people see it. And if you think that these kinds of programs are interesting, if you would like to subscribe to our channel, we have, I mean, Kim is probably one of the most interesting, but we have all sorts of interesting people that we're bringing to show their stuff and talk about their stories and just talk about native wildlife and how to coexist with who lives in your backyard, right? And that is what Kim is doing pretty well.
So let me, do you want me to go back to that? You want me to go back to my YouTube channel so they can see where that is?
Sure, what's up, whatever you want to do. Yeah, yeah, show us what your YouTube channel is. And yeah, if you're not already on her YouTube channel, this is a good time to
Am I screen sharing right now?
yes.
Is it? Okay. So my channel is just Bear Tracker 777 on YouTube.
Bear Tracker 777. Yeah.
Yep, and there it is. And then if you want to see any of my videos, I have probably a couple hundred videos on here. I don't remember how many, but I do talk a lot about tracking in here. I'll go through how to track different animals. I have a lot of underwater videos. I have just examining tracks and sign left by different animals. Here I talk about scat in this one right here. Mountain lion tracks and scat, how to identify them. Trailing black bears. I do a lot of trailing black bears in here because that's what I love. But there's also a large collection of trail camera videos in here. And then just things where I explain different types of animal sign. In this one, I talk about otter, raccoon, and mink tracks. This one's brush rabbits. So there's a variety of things in here. If you're interested in learning more about tracking, I have the videos, and I also have the website, beartracker.com, which is bear-tracker.com. That's this one here. So you're welcome to come there or join the Facebook group if you have any tracks you would like identified, and that's at Animals Don't Cover Their Tracks. And my email's on there if you have a track question or you know, you want to send me a photo of a track to look at, I always do that too. Or scats.
I know, that's so much fun. It's so funny when you tell people, yes, I get emails of a scat all the time when they're like,
all the time.
You really want me to send you that picture to tell you to decide what it is? And then they're like, oh yeah, I get pictures of scat all the time. And they're like, oh, well, that's very interesting.
Yep, trackers get emailed scats all the time. We're used to it.
All right. Well,
it's not uncommon.
we will end this here because we are after our 7 o'clock hour and everybody's got stuff to do. I just want to say
Yeah.
thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. And
Thank you, everyone.
this has been so much fun, and make sure that you look for Kim on YouTube. She's Bear Tracker 777. Bear-tracker.com is the website. And these are all in the chat comments on the YouTube page as well. And also the amazing Facebook group, Animals Don't Cover Their Tracks. So thank you guys again for joining us tonight. And please subscribe to Kim's channel, and please subscribe to my channel. And we are sending all sorts of good stuff out into the universe. And
happy tracking to everybody.
yes, happy
Yeah.
tracking.
And-
And if you didn't get your email, if you didn't get your question answered tonight, please send her that email because she would love to answer your question.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'll do my best to answer everything. And thank you for having me on, and thank you for being here watching, everybody that participated. And I hope you enjoyed it and you know, get to learn a little bit about tracking and see you out there on the trail.
all right, so now I'm going to do the 20-second countdown.
Right.
17.
Thanks, everyone. Oh, it keeps cutting my hand off.
Because you know why? It's your virtual background.
Oh, is it? It cuts off the hand, cuts off my fingers.
Makes you look spooky.
It does. I have a